afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. I'm going to go over a few bills that are moving through the legislative process right now that deal with open data. As I'm sure many of you know, open data has become a huge issue in the legislature this year, mainly because the state did pass Proposition 42, which now allows the state to not have to reimburse public agencies for any mandate that we have to provide under the California Public Records Act. That means they'll be able to pass bills that mandate for us to do something under CPRA, and we will no longer be able to get reimbursed for it. So obviously that means that a lot more bills are going to be coming down the tubes that require us to do what the next bills that I'm going to discuss do, and we will have to cover the costs on our own. So a big thing that I'll be doing on behalf of counties will be to ensure that those bills that do get passed and move through the legislature allow us to provide open data as well as records to the public at a cost that's fair to us, but also maintain that transparency. I'm going to go ahead and start with AB 169. It's by Assemblymember Mainshine, and this is a pretty easy bill. All it basically does is say if a local government voluntarily posts data online on their website that they describe as open, that definition of open has to meet a certain guideline. So as you'll see on your slide, it has to be retrievable, downloadable, indexable, and electronically searchable by commonly used internet search applications. It has several other requirements that we would have to follow, again, if we voluntarily call it open on our website. This is a bill that CSAC will most likely plan on coming in support of. We do, in our platform here at CSAC, support government data being open and accessible to the public. Obviously, it's not a mandate. It's not requiring us to do anything. It's simply if we volunteer to call this open data. A much larger range bill is SB 272, and that is by Senator Hertzberg. And this has enjoyed some amendments as it's come down the line. We're working really closely with the authors as well as the sponsors to ensure that counties and cities and special districts are held harmless while we try to abide by the requirements of the bill if it does indeed get signed by the governor. What it basically does is require a local government to catalog information about their data systems. And they call these enterprise systems in the bill, and as you'll see by the slide, that's defined in the bill as a multi-departmental system or a system that contains information collected by the public and is a system of record. It has to be both of those things. The bill defines a system of record as a system that serves an original source of data within the agency. If you go to the next slide, you'll see what the catalog that we prepare, that each local agency prepares. You'll see the list of requirements that local agencies must follow. This bill, like I said, I can't promise you that this is going to be the language that's in the bill by the end of this. We're working really hard with the author. We feel that the definition of enterprise system is really broad. The sheriffs and police chiefs are also working with us and the author. We're afraid of getting hacked because we're posting the names of vendors. We're looking at trying to maintain that line between providing access to the public about what data we keep, where the data can be found, but also maintaining our cyber security. So again, we're working very closely with the author. We're hoping that amendments get taken to narrow that definition of enterprise system, as well as we want to maintain that there's a difference between the definitions of data and record within the California Public Records Act. And we want to make sure that the internal systems that they're referencing in the bill don't include things like our jail systems and access to highly confidential data that could prove a cybersecurity risk, as well as a physical security risk to the county. And with that, I will hand it off to John Ridener, who will provide you a comprehensive look at open data systems and how we're going to approach reacting to the legislature's focus on open data for public agencies.
Hello everyone, thanks Faith for that overview of the pending legislation. I wanted to talk about my experiences with working in open data at the San Mateo County as the open data community liaison there, and give an overview of not why, but how to make open data policies work. So I'll talk a little bit about the history of San Mateo County's open data program and then move on from there. So in 2012, the County Board of Supervisors and Reina Ferralis, our Deputy County Manager for Performance Management, decided that it would be a great idea to start an open data program, an open government program, and started with the San Mateo County Performance Dashboard. So these 3 dashboards, which you can look at performance.smcgov.org, are available for Shared Vision 2025, and that is the sort of community-based Board of Supervisors approved vision for what the county will be doing in 2025, sort of big picture goals, and the dashboards show the progress towards those goals. Every department has to contribute performance measures in the department performance dashboards. And finally, there's a dashboard for Measure A, which is a half-cent sales tax that was approved by voters also in 2012. And that shows how that tax is being run, being spent, how the money is being spent. And also, we have the program expansion. And that is where the open data program really expanded. My position was created last year. And this open data program expanded to include data about the county. So we have census data available. We have our restaurant health inspections available. We also have our beach and creek monitoring results for bacteria, which is available from an early date in 2012. And so with my position, the first year I've been establishing the program, working with different departments to add data, sort of define what high quality data is. And then the second year, I'm turning to focus on content and really get authoritative, granular data from departments automatically contributed to the open data portal so that people can use it. And while I enjoy looking at data, at spreadsheets on the web all day long, that's a lot of my job, I realize that that isn't really the case for everyone. So the other half of my job is to go out into the community and get people to use our data, create applications, use it in their businesses, and also to serve the citizens who receive county services better and use the data to do that. All right, so let's move into talking about the policy, open data policies, and how. Well, I guess let's start with why first. I know that I said not why in the title, but I really wanted to plug the importance of having an open data policy. It's really structured my work and helped me to go to departments and work with individuals in a very directed way. So it might be a challenge to come up with an open data policy, but as someone who's benefited from that for the past year, I really appreciate it. So there are a few motivations, obviously. These are 3 of them I came up with. One reason you might want to create an open data policy is to participate in the open government movement. There's a lot of great press coming out about the value of open data. There's a lot of energy around engagement with citizens, civic technology, hackathons, and things like that. So maybe you're just interested in participating in that. There's also, as Faith mentioned, pending legislation here in the state that you might want to establish a policy before that happens, and then it'll be easier to work within that legislation if it's passed. There are also practical reasons. Maybe you get Public Records Act requests and they're a burden. Maybe that's for the same type of data that you constantly have to spend staff time to respond to. You can put that data on the web, in an open data portal, for instance, and direct requesters to those places. And then opportunistic reasons. There's a community engagement opportunity here, which, as I have found in the past year, is a challenge for county governments. A lot of the energy around civic technology comes from cities. If you look at where the sort of leading open data places are, it's Los Angeles, it's San Francisco, Chicago, Philadelphia. But the irony is that counties provide a lot of the services that those individuals want to connect citizens with, to make it easier to get EBT benefits or to receive veteran services from the county level. So there's some opportunity there to engage with residents and to improve service delivery. And here we have a picture of our first hackathon, which we held earlier in June, earlier this month, and it was great. It's an opportunity to premiere our open data portal to get feedback from participants, from people who code and program about the content, but also now we have the opportunity to connect with these people further and get them involved in their county government. So one thing that's very important for an open data policy to be successful is executive support. It's been a huge help for me in San Mateo County, knowing that from the county manager on down on the staff side and the board of supervisors really promote open data and open government. Without their help, without Ridener's help, and without our CIO John Walton's help, I would be spinning my wheels and wouldn't be here talking to you today. So it's absolutely vital to have executive support, and having a policy in place will help do that. Having that executive support will help drive programs and those program leaders to open data. There's a big carrot and stick problem in open data where, especially if it's based on performance reporting, everyone needs to do it, but it's a burden, it's extra work, no one has time for it. But with executive support, you can turn those complaints into opportunities, whether it's engagement or sharing data, that kind of thing. So the executive support helps spread that out across the organization. And it also creates new opportunities like the hackathon. Another program that I'm starting recently is a community-based organization outreach. So we work with a group, it's an organization for community-based organizations called Thrive, where we're engaging those organizations mostly that provide services to the county through contracts to work with our data and help them understand how they can use data better in their organizations, which will ultimately better help serve the county, and also to help them show their performance, which will help them renew their contracts. So there are different opportunities there to create more opportunities. Here is a picture of Megan Smith, the federal chief technology officer. She has come from Google and is continuing to support organizations and portions of the federal government like 18F and the USDS, the US Digital Service. So that sort of support is needed at all levels. Creating an open data policy will help you set your program level, which is different than I've seen every place that I've talked with at different conferences and things like that. So in San Francisco, their open data policy created a chief data officer position and really set up an executive level sort of situation there. In San Mateo County, as I mentioned before, we have sort of a split between performance management and the open data side of open government. And so that's split between our county manager's office and our information services department. And I've heard around through various contacts that it's pretty rare to have a technical person, such as myself, in ISD or in IT to be so heavily involved in the programmatic part of open data. So that may be unique, but also an option. And then another option is in Montgomery County, Maryland, which we consider a peer for performance reporting. Their program, which is very well known and really great, is run through a project manager in their project management office. So in the open data policy, there's the opportunity to set that level. And maybe you want to start out small and expand, or start out big and fill in underneath. It's really up to you. How do you want to run that opportunity? Okay, implementation. This is probably what everyone's been waiting for with the how, not why. So I'll talk a little bit about how to implement an open data policy and how to do it from the beginning. So the most important thing, if you take anything away from this webinar, is that in order to share data publicly, you have to be able to share it internally. And whether that means you email spreadsheets attached to messages, or you have a full SharePoint implementation, or You have other ways to do that. It has to be shared within your organization so that the decision becomes if you want to share that data with the public, not how can we get this information from this mainframe system that's been in place for 20 years and is working great, but doesn't export to the file format that you need it to export to in order to get it into your open data portal. So it's very important to be able to limit the decision to publish a data set to a yes or no decision and not a series of decisions that will ultimately become a burden and turn people off to participating in open data. Another thing to remember is that your county is the only source for authoritative data about the county. No one else can publish it. So while there's concerns about disclosing information, what if the data is incorrect? What if a curious citizen stumbles upon something that they think is wrong and wants to point it out to the county, to your open data program? Well, that's fine. I actually think that's good. That's what we're asking people to do. And that's an opportunity to have a conversation about the data rather than, I generally don't like the county and I want to find something wrong with them, and as the county wanting to defend what you've done. So there's an opportunity to turn that sort of gotcha moment into something that's beneficial and maybe have an engaged citizen who is willing to review your data for you. So that's something important to remember. When starting out, I would recommend focusing on easy wins. So if there are reports or data that's frequently requested, like Public Records Act requests, or any information that goes between departments frequently, start there. Release that information if you can. That's an easy place to start and doesn't take a lot of thought. The people who work with the data know what data they need, and they know how difficult it can be to get it. And so you can ask them, and they'll help you. You can leverage their expertise. Performance reporting, if you do that, is a great place to start. Again, that's speaking to the burden of open data and performance reporting. If you can release the data that feeds your performance reports, that's a huge chunk of open data that will help you start your program and then ultimately lead to more data being released because of other opportunities. Focus on interested and willing departments. So in this past year, I've spent time looking for those interested and willing departments and found some great partners in our Human Services Agency who have a lot of data, epidemiologists using data. There are social workers and other folks using data. And they have some data that's very difficult to release, that can't be released because it has personally identifiable information in it. But they're still willing to work with me and participate in our Open Data Committee and guide that work. And that's been a huge win for the Open Data program. And we've really delved deep with them in a number of ways. One of which was the sort of the themes for our hackathon in June were almost all HSA based, and the head of the department was a judge for the hackathon. So there are opportunities to create connections and then leverage those connections into engagement opportunities as well. Another example is our Parks Department, who is interested in working on changing a lot of their reporting from paper-based to digital. And that's an opportunity to both create data collection methodologies and applications and structure the way the data comes in to the Parks Department, but also structure that in a way that it can be shared easily. And so, there's a variety of opportunities. It really is a challenge to ask people who's interested in doing more work or different work, but people will answer, and as long as you're willing to sort of go to where those interests are, it will help your open data program fueled by the policy. And then finally, focus on MVPs. In the Bay Area, especially, MVPs currently include Stephen Curry and minimum viable products. So that's something that a lot of agile development folks in the software industry will be familiar with. Minimum viable product. In this case, I would suggest that you think of what is the smallest step you can take to publish a single data set. Maybe that is street sweeping schedules from Public Works, or maybe it is the county staff salaries that are already published online, but maybe you can take the step to publish those. So the minimum product that you can produce that people might be interested in. And the reason that that's so important is that starts the conversation. That's the first piece where you say, here's the data that we're releasing, what do you think? And maybe there's resounding silence, or maybe there's one or two people who respond, but then you can build on that and add more data and hopefully get to the point where the momentum has shifted so that other departments can see the opportunities that are created through engagement or hackathons or performance reporting burden being lifted from those departments that are contributing. In the open data world, it's all about sharing, which I have benefited from greatly and hope to contribute to soon. A lot of these programs share all of their program material and encourage other people to reuse it and to improve upon it. So there's no reason to feel like you're out there in the world with no guidance. In fact, Data SF, which is the San Francisco Open Data Program site, has a step-by-step handbook on how to create a data inventory. So with this pending legislation coming for data inventories, that would be a great resource. I'm using it and adapting it to San Mateo County to do a data inventory for all of our departments. Regardless of whether that data will be released in the Open Data Portal, it's more to create a strategic asset for each department so they can manage their data and then make that yes or no decision about whether they want to publish it or not. The city of Chicago uses GitHub to post code on data transformations that they do within their open data program. They also post data there for developers to use. So that's a great strategy and a great example of ways to leverage what others are sharing. You probably don't have the same data and maybe don't have the same systems, but you can see the types of work that they're doing and use that in your own program. And I apologize for the long URL here, but it is clickable in the slides. Alameda County has posted an apps challenge white paper, so if you're interested in hosting a hackathon or an apps challenge, for our hackathon at San Mateo County, we literally use this as our step-by-step guide. It's an amazing guide, and I would like to thank them for sharing it and hope that we can contribute back with our experiences as well. But overall, it's not a requirement to do something brand new when you're following in the footsteps of these programs that have done a great job, both in terms of opening data, creating policies, etc., but also sharing how to do that. And so finally, after creating your policy and publishing some minimum viable products and reusing what's available, you can reach your open data designation of success. But at what cost? Isn't this stuff expensive? Well, it doesn't have to be. You can use available services on the web like GitHub or even Dropbox or other commercial services that allow you to share files. If you have a SharePoint extranet site, you can post a few files there. It doesn't really have to cost a lot of money. The important thing that I found in engaging with app developers and citizens who are interested in using open data is that the data is available. As a manager of an open data program, I want to have it look nice and I want it to come up in search results, but if I were just starting, I wouldn't worry about that stuff. The content is much more important to those folks who want to reuse the data and ultimately help you create better services and better service delivery in a data-driven way. And in terms of cost, there are open source data portal software packages and platforms. CKAN, which is CKAN, is one of them. There's an adaptation of that for Drupal if you have Drupal on your site called DKAN, D-K-A-N. Open source software has been described as being free like a puppy, so that it's free to get but costs to maintain. And if that initial cost is prohibitive, you should explore that, and you can customize it however you'd like. That said, vendors can provide a ton of support. In San Mateo County, we use Socrata for both the performance and open data platforms. It's basically the same technology, and they have helped us and helped me in the past year get up to speed on best practices. They help us push us actually as they develop their product to think of open data and what we're publishing and how we visualize and reuse that information on our own sites in new ways. So while it may not be free, you do get a lot of services and support, and I have found great relief in talking with them that I don't have to define open data and talk about what that is for 20 minutes before getting to sort of my question about how do I boost my search engine optimization so people can find my data sets easily in Google. So I definitely want to plug thinking about diving in head first and going with a vendor, because they can also help. And with that, I think that's all I have. We have time for some questions. And please feel free, if my contact information is here, please feel free to call me, email, tweet to me. I'm happy to answer any questions about open data or my experiences. So thanks.
Our first question is about the recent proposal by venture capitalist Tim Draper to pay for a 1-year subscription to OpenGov for all counties that want to take him up on it. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea worth exploring. One of the things that I've found to be true in the past year working with San Mateo County is that sort of sharing data in concept is a great way to get to open data, but in practical ways, how do you do that? And so I think something like OpenGov would be a great way to get started, especially for new or currently non-existent programs, to find a way forward and use OpenGov and use this opportunity to move forward. Again, I think that there's a special challenge for counties to engage with their citizens, and I think that a lot of open government and open data initiatives in cities have been started by people asking for data. Counties don't necessarily enjoy that kind of visibility or sort of civic understanding on the part of people who want information. So if there's an opportunity like this to start working with OpenGov, I think that is worthwhile and worth looking into.
Another question is, how important do you think it is to have a full-time person like yourself in charge of the open data process versus having a decentralized group of people who all have it as part of their duties?
So coming from an area in Silicon Valley, one of the things that people talk about is product owners, and I think that is very important to have someone who owns the open data or open government program, whether that is shared ownership like we have in San Mateo County, or whether it's a single project manager like in Montgomery County. I think that's very important. Whether that's a full-time position, I, of course, for job security, think that that's very valuable. But I think it's useful because it's really a champion role, both internally and outside of the county. So I have the opportunity to learn about what all departments in the county are doing and see and make some connections there. And I think that having my role being housed in the Information Services Department gives a unique perspective so that I can provide technical support for people doing performance reporting, but I can also then interact with programmers and coders and app developers and speak their language and sort of translate that to the program. So full-time, it sounds great, but I think a dedicated owner is definitely important.
Another one, maybe more about governance. In your county, was the Board of Supervisors heavily involved in this? Did it get started at their direction, or do they continue to be involved in it, or is it a staff-driven program?
That's a great question. The establishment of the program in 2012 was before my time, but I do know that the Board of Supervisors are very supportive of our efforts and want to make it happen. But in San Mateo County, we work very collaboratively, and that's something that I really appreciated, sort of coming on board in a new position and sort of defining what open data means for the county. So while the performance reporting sort of drove the technical need for the performance platform and dashboards, it was definitely with the support of the Board of Supervisors, and it's an interesting opportunity to report back to the community on their input for issues around the Shared Vision 2025 and the Measure A half-cent sales tax, so that collaborative work really has come together, so much so that I don't know that I could definitively answer who started it.
It looks like it's all the questions we have. Thank you, John, and thank you, Faith, for your presentations today. Thank all of you for attending.